first is are you in an industry where the rules change often? And so it's really clear if you're in regulated industries where literally the rules of different counties can mandate if you can or can't do business in these jurisdictions. And so that would be a very clear line that you are in a complex commerce situation. Number two is around the size of your catalog. Do you probably need a PIM? There's a tremendous amount of inherent complexities around searchability, discoverability, merchandising that come with a huge catalog, and how elegantly you can manage that. The third is really around the business model that you have and trying to figure out, if you look at how you service customers as a distributor, let's say, and how it varies from your closest competitor, if there are clear 2 or 3 things that you do that's different than most, that's probably a pretty good tell that you've got complexity that don't fit in someone else's mind. Hello, my name is Jason Nyhus, and I'm president of Shopware, an e-commerce platform built for the mid-market.
So, I know your e-commerce journey goes way back, right? Digital River, I believe, was some of the origins.
Yep.
A little over 20 years, maybe 25 years of e-commerce. Talk to me about that journey in the early years and then how it's led to you to Shopware today.
Well, I got my start in e-commerce back in the year 2000, and it was right at the time of the dot-com bubble. It was a really exciting and fun time to be in e-commerce because every day new companies would call us up asking us to help take them online. And what was really exciting about that experience was my company was Digital River at the time. And in order to help these companies go online, they had to embrace the change of go-to-market, one that was predominantly only through retail, that was going to eventually be direct to consumer. And largely that's where my journey started. What was really powerful about that journey is in order to take companies online, you needed to check all of their boxes. And so this was a world where the people who could do the most, the best, the fastest would win. And that was the Digital River model in digital. And so we took brands, software, and gaming companies online and disintermediated retail. And the good news at the time is that was a very, very kind of wide category of margin, and they could simply hire Digital River and improve their margins basically by doubling it. And so that was really my journey of getting into essentially B2C e-commerce and disintermediating retail all the way back in the year 2000. So that's where I started.
That was also from 2000 to 2000, probably 13, 14, was also the glory days of $3 million software deals and $15 million implementation deals.
Well, exactly. And
those days are well gone. But
those days are gone. Those days are gone. But what it taught me actually is, and I apply a lot of these learnings, what Digital River was trying to do was to be the one-stop, buy it all from us model. And what happened was, at some point in that journey, the value of getting everything from one partner was not as strong as buying the parts from the industry-leading providers. And so what was also really interesting about that, Justin, was it was Digital River versus the world. And so we'd have to go in and compete with not only a commerce platform, but an agency and a payment provider and so it was a model where the ecosystem over time built up enough great customer bases, stories, credit, etc., that they were able to take over this big monolithic sales motion of everyone's, that we were, which really taught me the power of the ecosystem. And any company who effectively wants to win long-term in this game has to be part of a larger ecosystem that's adding value well beyond what you can do yourself. It was one of the big life lessons I took from that.
How did your journey go from Digital River to Shopware?
Yeah, well, first of all, I spent 20 years at Digital River, and it was an amazing journey. I got the opportunity to be a chief marketing officer, and we, just a little bit of an aside, we pivoted when we realized that in the Gartner Magic Quadrant, we were a leader, but we were then competing against Salesforce because they bought Demandware, Oracle obviously had ATG. SAP bought Hybris. The list goes on. And so Adobe bought Magento. And so what we realized in that moment was just because we were a leader, the world was dramatically changing. And this was supposed to be the era when big software was going to come in and make e-commerce enterprise grade. And to a lot of extent, they've done that. But what that drove Digital River to go do was to pivot and to be, instead of being the we do everything for you, narrow our value prop down to effectively being a payments, fraud, and tax engine that plugs into Salesforce and Adobe and SAP and BigCommerce and other platforms. Okay. So that was about a 5-year journey that we created a really meaningful business out of. And I started to realize that this is about the year, call it 2021. We're doing big deals with all those companies. Their products are almost all exactly the same. Okay. They have different words for it. They describe it differently, but the utility in almost all these core commerce engines was largely the same. Okay. And so I get a call from a recruiter, and the timing was absolutely perfect, but they said, we want to talk about this company Shopware. And being in e-commerce for 20 plus years, I said, who the hell is Shopware? Why does the world need another commerce platform? There are plenty. And that was when I began to understand that there's massive amounts of opportunity by pricing different, by segmenting different, by serving an underserved market, giving more flexibility. So there's a whole bunch of things inherently unique and different about the way Shopware does it versus the market. And I see that as a big opportunity.
You talked about, in your intro of yourself, you talked about being mid-market focused. What does that mean to you?
Well, it's really informed by meeting with a lot of merchants and them describing the pain that they have. Classically speaking, a mid-market merchant would be defined by a revenue band. And that's fine. That's a little bit lazy. But more practically, what it means is it's a business that has a high level of complexity for their size. It's a business that is differentiated versus their competitors in some unique ways that they must preserve to win. Some workflow, some storytelling, some relationships, something, the way they price, the way they package, whatever it is. It needs to be celebrated and supported as opposed to pushed into a box. It means that these mid-market merchants, they want to have great technology and they want to have a composable option, but they can't afford to buy the box of Legos and assemble the castle themselves. What they want is a great castle that you can change the Lego pieces out as your business evolves and grows and changes. And these are businesses, especially in B2B with like distributors, that can't pay via a revenue share. And so when we think about mid-market, it's those types of companies. High level of complexities, relatively small budgets. They really don't, they're allergic to a revenue share. They got small teams and they need really efficient tooling. To me, that's mid-market. And that's who we're built for. And it's way more than just a pricing strategy, Justin, as you know. SMB solutions try to move up market by putting you in a box. As long as you fit in that box, this is a great solution. And enterprise companies say, well, we'll just give you our great software for a cheaper price. But their support levels, the way you customize and configure, doesn't go down to meet those core needs. So when I was thinking about joining Shopware, it was all about whose needs are not being met today in the market. And it was very clearly that mid-market merchant.
You've talked about rev share a couple of times. Why is that a consideration when you look at pricing this for a distributor?
Yeah. So as you know, probably better than me, distributors generally operate, depending on the vertical, with relatively thin margins. You know, they buy the product for $50 and then they sell it for $54 and they make the spread of that $4 in this example. Well, if an e-commerce platform wants to take 50 basis points and then your payments wants to take 2.5 points, well, you're already at 3 points of your, whatever 6, 7, 8 you make. Well, they're allergic to that. And they should be. Low margin businesses, think consumer electronics, or distributors just simply don't have the margin on an operating expense basis to pay for things that way. What distributors need to do is they say, I might spend $100,000 for this, but I'm going to capitalize it. And as my business adds volume and my margin stays flat, I make more money, right? These are businesses of economies of scale businesses that the cost they pay for services have to be basically going down as their businesses scale. And rev shares, generally speaking, don't do that.
There's other models too where, like in the B2C world, you can take a percentage of, you can measure the pricing by the size of the company because there's a correlation between e-commerce sales and the size of the company. And in the B2B world, you might have a $1 billion distributor only doing $50 million, right? In e-commerce sales. So you can't price it that way either. So that percentage of revenue, percentage of sales is just a really difficult pricing model.
And by the way, I see many companies doing it both of those ways. The third way is really an order fee model, which is more reasonable. The higher the average order value, the less the cost. That works. What we've seen people be more interested in is a fixed license fee that takes into account all of the dynamics of the business, the load, the number of users, all those things, but pegs it and makes it a capitalizable expense over a period of time. That has been far more appreciated by merchants we talk to.
Based off of some of the other podcasts that you've done, I heard that you were skeptical, does the world really need another e-commerce platform? And so I'm interested from your perspective, what is one misconception of the Shopware platform that you had coming in to Shopware?
Well, I love the question, Justin. I'd never worked in open source before. So I've been part of a community. We were part of, say, Salesforce's ecosystem. We were delivered via some agencies. And so my view of the world was really focused on that. And Digital River was a multi-tenant SaaS offering. And so that was kind of my view. And so when I joined Shopware, I didn't really truly appreciate the ability to customize and configure. And I didn't truly appreciate the fact that it's open source. And that allows us to have that allows us not to have vendor lock-ins. And so, Shopify is the greatest box ever invented for commerce. But if you want to buy from Shopify, you're taking their payment offering, which is where they make 3 out of every $4 as a company. Okay. The fact that Shopware is open and committed to the community means that we don't believe in vendor lock-ins. You can use whoever you want, and the benefits of scale can be recognized by you, the merchant. So in other words, if you're doing 50 million and you can save 40 basis points on payments, go for it. You should. And that was a misconception I had going in, is I didn't really truly appreciate the value of open and the business ramifications of that, especially for businesses of scale.
How does open source, like when you think about the B2B world, like I feel like open source in the retail world, when it's so developer heavy, you have this ability then to kind of plug components together in open source. As you've experienced this with manufacturers and distributors, how have they kind of viewed the open source model versus kind of the black box that you take?
Yeah. Well, generally the conversation goes one of a number of ways. The first, which I think is probably the most common, is we get them to talk about the things that they can't live without, the points of differentiation for a distributor. Might be regional, might be relationship based. And we really try to review their requirements and make sure that we're not forcing them into a box they do not fit. And so that's really point one. And the second thing we do is we analyze requirements and give out a report that's very different than our competition. As an example, we will tell a distributor, 64% of what you're asking for in your requirements is out of the box. You can just turn it on and use it. 28%, you probably require an app or a plugin, of which are open as well that you can modify to your needs. And that leaves between 8 and 10% of the requirements you have that are customizations. which can be purpose built to your things that make you special. And so we really like to have a kind of fact-based discussion around those two things. What makes you special, and how big or small is the level of effort to get exactly what you want? And by the way, sometimes forcing people into a box and making them live without it is exactly what brands need.
Yeah.
And so there's a tremendous amount of value in Shopify's multi-tenant SaaS environment because it becomes a forcing function. Where we have success with the open source approach is where people have a self-identified that they can't live without it. The way they do ship tos is completely different and has to be purposely designed in their experience. So that's kind of how we handle
Well,
that.
that happens. I mean, in the manufacturing and distribution world, that happens every day for you guys. Because how do you fit into a business model when business model is how you've competed in the market, right? The different business model services, ease of use with your customers, integration with their systems, whatever it might be. I would imagine too that doing that requirements session, mapping it also would force someone to prioritize what is actually important here, right? Because if you can get 64% to your kind of example, you get 64% for your, core requirements, and then another 20% through plugins. And now you're looking at that 10%, and you can make decisions on what's worth it and what's not worth it.
Exactly. This is a little bit of the different cycle we run, and we run it with our agency partners. And so you're kind of getting our view and you're getting the agency view. And by the way, the other thing, you almost need both points of view to make a real decision because there's so much bias and the market has been a little tough for the last couple of years. And so platforms are being a little bit more aggressive with what they're saying they can do out of the box.
Yeah.
And we're trying to take a different approach.
There's been quite a bit of pendulum swing SaaS. I mean, we were on-premise SaaS, and you guys kind of sit in the middle with open source. How do you see this playing out in the market, at least in the B2B world? How do you see this playing out? I see in the B2B world not as much need for the SaaS architecture as I do in the retail world, because they're so used to ERPs being on-premise. They have networks and data centers that they're managing because of their internal systems being so kind of robust and network heavy and things like that. And the fact that the ERP themselves often is not in the cloud, or it's, local network-based ERP. How do you guys kind of see that swinging over the next couple of years?
Yeah. Well, a couple of points on that. One of the things that I was most excited about when I joined Shopware is I realized that it's a product that was actually launched in December of 2019, which means it's 5 years old. And everybody we compete with, even though they're multi-tenant SaaS, are 15 to 20 years old. What does that mean? That means that most of their engineering is going to refactoring for things like mobile, and social, and marketplaces, and APIs, and webhooks, and all the context changes that have happened in the last, 15 years, including headless. And so, these things, while in B2C, it makes a tremendous amount of sense if you are a simple commerce user to go with someone's cloud that already exists, that already made a bunch of choices that you would make, and you make those, and you agree with those choices, and you go. In B2B, one of the powers of this new product that we've launched is it can be run in any cloud. It can be run in a multi-tenant SaaS environment that we host, by the way. Sold very little to none of those. Why? Because the trade-offs and choices and opinions we've made are probably similar to what you could have done in Shopify. And so if you want to buy that, probably just buy Shopify or BigCommerce. But then we've got this middle option, which is kind of a Goldilocks. It's called PaaS, Platform as a Service. This allows you to take the product, have it hosted and managed in AWS or Azure, whatever cloud you want, but it's managed by someone else who that's all they do. And nowadays, because the cost of compute is so far down and has been reducing, it is incredibly economical to have this PaaS environment, which still gives you the ability to do development and customizations and configurations to your heart's desire. And so it's a little bit, like I said, it's that middle Goldilocks use case, which is probably the most common that we see. But you referenced it, this quote unquote third on-premise, third option really has translated into a bring your own cloud environment. Mm-hmm. Most of the merchants we're talking to that are running any sort of ERP or a CRM data infrastructure, they're running it inside of an AWS, an Azure, a GCP, or some other hyperscaler, and running Shopware next to it because they have the DevOps and the infrastructure people. No big deal. It's easy. And so the costs change. And some of the opinionation, we're less opinionated on the self-managed as opposed to the SaaS. Merchants get to pick the adventure that's right for them. So that's the long-winded answer to your question, Justin.
So being B2B commerce focused, what direction are you guys going with B2B? Why is B2B important to Shopware? Where do you see the big opportunities in the manufacturing distribution space?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that really align nicely with Shopware with B2B. And when I first joined, I was analyzing our customer lists and verticals. And I found it's basically 60 to 70% of our business. So that's like 30,000 to 40,000 merchants that we have running B2B. And I asked myself the question, why is that? And there's really a couple of key elements. The first being an open source product or a fixed license product, it fits nicely into these low margin verticals. Mm-hmm. Very, very nicely. So economically, we have an execution advantage. Secondarily, most of these B2B companies don't major in digital. They minor in it. And they might have some really, really smart people, but the teams are not that big. So they lean heavily on these agency partners to go execute. And they lean heavily on the advice of them on what to buy. Because Shopware is open, we fit very nicely with this ecosystem. And by the way, we also have 0 people who can do client implementations, very intentionally. We give all of that opportunity to our partners. And then third, and this might even be most important, we have unique utility that really opens up the paradigm of what B2B commerce can be, called sales agents and digital sales rooms. And I'd love to talk about that as well, Justin.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because I think let's start here though before we talk about that. I've done rants for the last 10 years about how the consumerization of B2B is the worst statement ever made, and I actually was there when it when it was made, and then I spoke out about it. But it's come up over the last certainly the last couple months, and then I heard you on a podcast also talking about this. And so I'd like to start with, like, why do you revolt against the consumerization of B2B?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. So one day, I like to start B2B conversations that I am a reformed B2C commerce guy who now fully appreciates the difference between B2B and B2C. And it wasn't probably until 3 or 4 years ago that the light bulb really went on for me in the differences, okay? It's a different language. It's very little the same, and mostly a lot of differences. But when I was at Digital River, we had always talked about next year is going to be the big year for B2B. Look how big the market is. Look how fast it's growing. We just need to find a way to tap that huge market opportunity. And so I had my marketing team go back and pull a bunch of quotes from Adobe and Salesforce and Shopify and you name it. And everybody talked about their investments in B2B and how next year is going to be huge. Constant theme. Okay?
Yep.
So I asked myself the question, why? Why do people, smart people who know e-commerce, continue to believe in this concept of consumerization of B2B? And I'll tell you my conclusion, and I want to hear yours too.
Yeah.
They're taking what's the right way to say this? They're taking a pure technology view as to how to solve the problem. They say, we can create software that automates pricing and images and integrates with ERPs and does all this work. And we can have this beautiful store that all these customers should go and buy from, as opposed to go into their sales rep. And what they've effectively done is they've solved the easy 10% of the B2B e-commerce opportunity. The easy 10. Okay, you got a portal. Okay, you've put your catalog in there. You've decided who can buy it at what price. You've solved for the self-service aspect of commerce. Great. I've not met a B2B company that's greater than 10, maybe 15% of their overall company revenue. Okay? So what B2B commerce, as we've defined it today, most companies, is they're really only serving the smallest part of the revenue stream in B2B digital.
Yep.
So where's the other part? The other part is in the hard 90. The hard 90 is in the hands of those sales reps. Those sales reps that don't like to update CRM. Those sales reps that view every order through e-commerce as a competitor. Those sales reps who sell with a Coke and a joke and 2 years ago's product marketing materials. Okay? So to me, the consumerization of B2B is just simply aiming at the wrong target. Yes, it's valuable. Yes, we have to have it. Yes, it's going to be decent revenue and nice growth, but it's not really addressing the 90% opportunity in really transforming and digitally enabling B2B sellers. I'd love your reaction to that.
No, I think you're right. I had the opportunity to be in the room when that quote was made, and it was 2010. There was a bunch of agencies meeting together about this B2B e-commerce thing. And there was such a disconnect, Jason, between the understanding of B2B and the differences between B2B and B2C. Nobody was able to wrap their heads around it. And I can remember when someone stood up and said, isn't commerce just commerce? Like, don't B2B people want, and they're buying what they get in their, in their home shopping type experiences, which by the way is an actual factual. That's a truth, right? Of course they do. What was misrepresented about that was they want the same experience. What they wanted is the same. They expected digital to make their jobs easier. They expected to be able to find products easier. They expected to be able to order easier. They expected to do, to be able to book things, quote things, like not even the transaction. They expected it to be more intuitive and easier. But that was translated as they want the same. Exactly. And then this horrible phrase came after that, which was people want an Amazon-like experience, which was even taking that a step further to untruth, to pure lies, because nobody wants an Amazon-like experience. Amazon isn't even building an Amazon-like experience for Amazon Business. What people want is the deep customer connection that Amazon has with their customer and their understanding, and it just was taken, and it really, what I called it. I wrote an article a couple months later after that meeting. And after a bunch of people published about this, and I said, this is the lazy man's approach to B2B e-commerce, is being able to draw some analogy to B2C. And even now, I just think it's a very prevalent thing. I think there are very few companies, Jason, that understand what B2B is. And I think part of that, and that's what leads me to the digital sales room, I think part of that is the not understanding how B2B transactions actually work and how things are sold. And I'd love for you, where did this idea of the digital sales room come from in your product?
Yeah. Well, I think you and I could talk for hours on this. Let me just go back and touch on one thing you said. So I believe that big tech is one of the most effective sales and marketing machines in the history of the world. Okay. We put our best and brightest people in selling software. Okay. And what they've done is they said, well, hey, listen, our product is really built for B2C. But if we can convince the world that they can also buy it and use it for B2B, we don't have to evolve the product at all.
That's right.
And so it's really around, we've got a solution looking for a problem, which is where I think this term consumerization of B2B comes from. And by the way, the same thing is true with all this old tech, and some of these are SaaS. The term headless came out of a world where they said, oh my God, we're getting our butt kicked by people's requirements around what you see is what you get, drag and drop, modifying it via APIs. We can't win that battle through R&D, so we're going to go headless, which basically means our back end can talk to someone else's front end. Mm-hmm. So they basically said, we're not going to evolve the product because it's really hard and expensive to do it. We're just going to try and change the narrative. And so that's why I don't believe in the consumerization of B2B as the big opportunity. Mm-hmm. And it's why we've effectively built what is very unique in the market of this digital sales room.
There's one more thing to that, which is most companies actually don't want to do B2B. Most software, you said it. You said all these companies were talking about B2B. The only one that did it early on in the days was Hybris and a little bit of IBM, Webster Commerce, right? And so, because we built the platform for B2B. Now, as we transition, there's a number of companies that are kind of talking about B2B, but not actually doing B2B. Because at the end of the day, like, nobody wants a B2B logo on their home screen. Like, you have a $5 billion, talking to $8 billion distributor, nobody's heard of, right?
Yeah.
And nobody wants their logo on their screen like they want Nike or someone else, because those other ones are sexy. And I find this very, very sexy. I love a manufacturing plant and distribution and warehouse management, all of it. But most people don't care about that, right? And so I think at the end of the day, too, it's mainly lip service, Jason, to B2B, which is also kind of the lazy man's approach. Talk to me about the salesperson's kind of role in purchasing, and then how you've been dealing with that.
Well, a couple of points I want to make as well. So, Shopware, one of our core beliefs is that we are purpose-built for the mid-market, and we're purpose-built for complex commerce. And you're 100% right. When we in fact, I did it yesterday. We show a logo slide of these unbelievable brands we work with, and the recognition of the names of those brands is relatively low. And if you're a distributor in fasteners, you won't necessarily appreciate these plumbing ones, right? So that is one of the go-to-market challenges of a company trying to serve that segment, is you're not going to see Nike's name on our roster of clients. Mm-hmm. So I want to acknowledge that point, because that is a real challenge of building momentum in this segment.
Absolutely.
Let's transition a little to your question around the digital sales room and the sales buy. So what's really fascinating, and anybody who's listening, if you're an agency, as an example, pay attention to the vibe of the person who runs sales inside of the organization and how they view this e-commerce project. My guess is arms are crossed. This is a competitor. They're taking a very kind of wait and see, don't move my cheese approach to e-commerce. Okay. In fact, I've seen it 6 times in the last week that they're either the most vocal because they're against it and they're trying to stump the chump, or they're quiet because they're just kind of hoping this thing goes away and gets minimalized and is over there, because they own 90% of the revenue in the company, and because that's where all of the actual management of people and process and reporting and revenue exists. So we start the meeting talking about the hard 90 and how we've got solutions that give the reps back time. And this concept of the digital sales room is actually modeled after telehealth in the United States. So today, 75% of hospitals and physicians in North America have the ability to serve their customers via telehealth. But only 25% of all appointments are taken via telehealth. So what does that tell us? It tells us that having this digital sales room utility is critical to serve some segment of your customer base. Not all. It's not a mandate like a CRM. It's a tool to help the sales reps make more money. And Justin, we usually talk about to reps and to managers of sales and say, how big is a rep's territory? And for this example, I'll say it's 50 accounts, mostly existing accounts. And they will make or miss their number with 10, the success or failure of 10 of those 50 accounts. So then we ask, are your sales reps investing time or energy with the customers 11 through 50? And almost without fail, they say very little, because they have to travel too far, because the orders are too small, or some other reason. Okay? So our response is insert the digital sales room there. That is where you have the most risk of your competitor going and over-servicing your customer. And it's where you have the most upside by actually giving them a telehealth experience that brings the power of commerce, the power of marketing and merchandising, the power of the relationship, all to a single experience that replicates and in fact enhances all the things you'd be able to do if you were face-to-face. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Explain what some of those things are.
Well, actually have a video I could show if you're okay with that.
We can definitely include it.
Okay. Well, it's just a PowerPoint video. Okay. So effectively, one of the big challenges with a distributor is they might have virtually endless aisle of catalog that they could show. And for just to say, hey, go to our e-commerce site and look through 100,000 SKUs to find exactly your fitment data for exactly what you need isn't a really great use of that person's time. But what the rep can then do is they can create what's called a curated session. They can say, I know this customer really well. I know what they bought in the past. I know what the new products are they may want. So I'm going to take what used to be a phone book down to a couple of pages, and I'm going to send them a link that's just store built and designed directly for them with their prices, with their promotions, with their incentives, and only the catalog that I think they need. That customer can shop in that experience, make their transactions, and never talk to the rep. That works. Or they can say, let's have a guided session. They click a button, schedule a meeting, and up pops just you and I on a call where we're both seeing the e-commerce experience. And the rep can then say, this is what's really, really powerful. The customer looks and feels and acts like they're shopping, okay? With a curated set of products. The rep might say, oh, you know what? I didn't know you wanted 2 years ago's products because you still have stuff that you need that for. I'm going to go out and do an instant listing. I'm going to grab some other products in the catalog. I'm going to pull them in, and now your store contains that. And so it kind of allows them to create almost a funnel-like experience right there on the call. The second thing that happens, Justin, is that sales rep has God view. What is God view? God view says, these are the products. These are what they're made of. This is where they're manufactured, which matters more today than ever. This is the margin. This is the commission you would make if you sell it. This is where the inventory is available. This is how much more they have to buy to get free shipping. All of this stuff, this metadata, is available at the rep's view and the customer never sees. Okay? And why it's better than Zoom, you might ask? All of this stuff, because Shopware is the most modern commerce platform on the web, all of this stuff is being stored and fed back in via webhooks into the CRM. So at any point, the manager of this team will be able to see what are these interactions, who's adding products, who's closing deals, what's still open, and it gives you a complete new visibility to something where if your rep's driving to a site and having a Coke and a joke, there's very little data and insights as to how that meeting went. So it gives you a digital advantage across basically all aspects of the sales rep's life. And the guiding principle we say is this is designed to give the reps more time to serve their underserved and make more money. And that fundamentally is the difference between just buying software, that's a mandate, and buying a tool that enables you to make more money.
How has that affected sales organizations that's been in place? Because I would imagine still you have adoption problems, right?
Absolutely.
But I would imagine that competition of someone doing better than them and using a tool like accelerates that whole process. How does How do teams that use this differ from teams that don't, or even individuals?
Yeah, we've got some interesting case studies building as we speak right now inside of sales organizations. You definitely have different levels of digital maturity and adoption. But what's going to be really fun about it, I mean, this product that Shopware rolled out is only 2 years old. And so, we have sub 100 companies using it as we speak, a whole bunch in build. And so we're going to get a lot more really cool stories coming out. The case studies I've seen is the reps that have adopted it have made, I don't even want to give you the numbers, 40, 50, 60% more than the reps who've not adopted it. And so there's a little bit of water finding its level that you can identify through the adoption of this tool.
Do you see the change? I mean, for a long time, I've said something like the biggest killer of any B2B commerce project is a salesperson that says, go check out our cute little website for the product you're looking for. When you want a product, actually come to me. I'll give you better pricing, right?
Exactly right.
Do you see that? Do you see that shifting now as you've introduced some of these tools of actually companies starting to embrace and sales teams starting to embrace new technology?
Well, the problem that you have, Justin, that use case I hear every single day is there's almost no controls to prove it's happening and to actually change behaviors. And so what the digital sales room does is they visit the curated session as opposed to just visit my website, find out what product you want and call me. I'm going to send you the list of products I think you want. And then when you engage with the rep, literally you can design it so their comp shows on the page. And so when they're giving the discount, they're giving the discount out of their commission. So as long as you can measure it, report on it, and actually drive behavior change, you'll start to see something different. If you don't, you won't. So that's been the take that most of the sales leaders we see have embraced, because right now they're giving free shipping on everything. As an example, there's no controls. With Shopware, we've got all the controls, the B2B commerce controls. So you can decide what thresholds you have to hit to qualify.
Do you see e-commerce and that digital sales room converging? There was some talks in the past about being alerted as my customers searching, seeing where they're struggling.
Yes.
We have instant messaging, and now you have this digital sales room tool, sales reps back here, maybe even offshore customer service. Integrating people and the commerce journey feels like what the future looks like, more than just automation. How do you kind of see that in the future, 5-10 years, as you look out from both the kind of customer side and the reps and people serving the customer?
Well, I don't want to pre-announce something, but we think very, very strongly about it.
But then you use the word but.
But I still will give you a teaser. But we think about this category, largely speaking, as agentic commerce. And we think there's roles for the humans to play, for the machines to play, for AI to really help automate a lot of these things. And we think about all these things converging in agentic commerce. And we'll announce what that means at our Shopware Community Day this summer. But I think we're in really early innings, what will be a transformational part of the hard 90 as opposed to consumerization, the easy 10. And this is where we're finally at a spot in our industry that digital can actually go address the hard 90. And digital sales room is part of it, but not the whole story.
Yeah, that's cool. How do you see, like, if you were asked just to summarize in a couple of sentences, how you differ, how Shopware differs? If I'm a manufacturer distributor, I'm listening to this, and I'm starting the B2B commerce platform selection process, looking to upgrade. Maybe I did something attached to my ERP. This is a pretty typical example. Something attached to my ERP. Now I need to move to something more advanced. What's the unique differences between Shopware and the kind of crowded field of B2B e-commerce?
It is a crowded field. I mean, there's 18 vendors on the last Gartner Magic Quadrant. So it's a crowded field. I think what stood out to me and why I really joined is a few things. Number one, anybody who says B2B and B2C are the same or close enough has never really done enough work sitting across from a B2B distributor or manufacturer. Number two, there's a lot of different use cases in B2B. Some platforms are really good at simple B2B. And I'll pick on Shopify again. Shopify is amazing, but they're really good at simple B2B. Complex B2B is a different thing. When you get into the distributors, when you get into marketplaces and all those other things, that's where you got to find a tool built for your problem. Okay. So that's kind of point two. Number three, these firms, like I said before, don't have deep expertise on all of the jargon of the e-commerce industry. That's why the role of the agency, and specifically agencies that work with more than one platform, are essential. If you go to an agency that only sells one platform, I can pretty much tell you what they're going to recommend. Number four, insist on no rev share. It's a broken model that's a tax on B2B businesses. You shouldn't pay them. That's dumb. You can pay a lot less for a lot more by not making it a rev share. Number five, vendor lock-ins are stupid. No one should be able to tell you what technologies you use, why, and when, especially if it has economic impacts to your business. And the last one is make sure you're thinking about the hard 90 and the sales reps and how you can digitally enable them and allow them to make more money, as opposed to only solving for the easy 10. So there's my 6 or 7 points.
If I'm a manufacturer distributor, you said point 2 or 3 was complex commerce.
Yeah.
How do I kind of think through that? Do I have complex commerce? And I actually think this is a really strong point to bring up. How do I know if I fit into the mold or I don't fit into the mold?
Well, we define complex commerce relatively broadly, but I'll give you my high level. The first is are you in an industry where the rules change often? Okay. And so it's really clear if you're in regulated industries, alcohol, tobacco, firearms, government, healthcare, fintech, where literally the rules of different counties can mandate if you can or can't do business in these jurisdictions. And so that would be a very clear line that you are in a complex commerce situation. Number two is around the size of your catalog. Do you probably need a PIM? There's a tremendous amount of inherent complexities around searchability, discoverability, merchandising that come with a huge catalog. And how elegantly you can manage that almost naturally lends itself to am I complex or not? The third is really around the business model that you have and trying to figure out, if you look at how you service customers as a distributor, let's say, and how it varies from your closest competitor, if there are clear 2 or 3 things that you do that's different than most, that's probably a pretty good tell that you've got complexity that don't fit in someone else's box. Those would be my 3.
I love those. Do you guys think about manufacturers versus distributors when it comes to this type of e-commerce? Like what's a better type of customer for you or a better type of user for you?
Well, we certainly have customers in both, but right now I'm seeing the majority of our momentum with distributors. That's been a real hot button for us. It seems like it's really underserved because they're ultimately trying to add value, but they're not trying to do it at increased OpEx. And that's a really tough environment to be in. So our offering lands nicely there.
Excellent. Any specific industries within that you guys are really maybe even more excited about? Not that you wouldn't, if you're not part of these industries, be a customer of yours, but any industries that you guys are just seeing a lot of growth in?
Yeah, well, we won deals in oil and gas, in the fastener space, the home builder space. Yeah, well, I tell you, Justin, one of the big aha moments for me in the last couple of years is we've effectively seeded simple commerce to Shopify. Okay, if you're simple, we're probably sending you that way. They have such market momentum. So that means that our energies and efforts around trade shows and events and demand generation has completely pivoted out of these classic simple commerce shows, e-tail, shop talk. Although we walk the floor, but our investments are in the flyover states, where I'm from, Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, like those areas, Ohio, where they have these shows, these fastener shows, or this home remodeling shows, or the builder shows. That's where we're finding the majority of our success. Mm-hmm. And you might agree with this, you might disagree. When I say I'm in e-commerce, 95% of people say we don't need that. But what they say is our website's ugly. We have a buying portal that nobody uses. Our sales reps have way too much manual processes. You know what I mean? So they describe the pain, but they also don't describe e-commerce as what they need to fix it.
I wrote an article a couple weeks ago basically saying, like, as part of that consumerization of B2B debate, saying our biggest problem with the B2B e-commerce industry is the word e-commerce. Like, we need to go back to 2002 e-business, type terms, because it describes, like, it's really about digital business. It's not about digital transactions or digital commerce or e-commerce.
It's a digital
that fits. I mean, your whole digital sales room is e-commerce, of course. Like, you could classify it that, but they would see it as a digital business tool to help them sell more, right?
That's exactly right.
I actually think we actually need to rewrite some terminology.
Yep.
I even looked up eBiz. I tried to get a couple URLs a couple weeks ago for eBusiness. It didn't work out so well. eBusiness.com is still a couple $1,000s.
That's funny. Well, I will say one of our biggest challenges is trying to make the RFPs. 3 years ago, we didn't get any RFPs. Now we're getting a ton, and it's awesome. But the RFPs are still writing the requirements towards the consumerization use case. And so our big challenge is making sure we can expand scope to the hard 90, because that's where the real opportunity is.
Yeah. And I know you're doing some work with Jason Nyhus and guys like that will definitely flip the script on that for sure, helping write real requirements, right? And real use cases. And that's amazing. It's amazing. Very good. Do you have did we not cover? Let me just look I have actually 10 more questions, but some are goofy. Do you have other things that you wanted to make sure
That was my list. I even answered some of your questions indirectly to cover my list. So I feel good.
That's great. No, that's great. Cool. I'll do some voiceover stuff and things like that in here. We're going to do full production on this video and stuff like that too. So this should be really good. Hey, if you want to, I don't think I offered it to Gretchen, but I'll make sure you know about it. If you guys are putting something out or you have a hot button or something like that, like, email Saya and say we'll schedule like 15 minutes even, and we'll jump on this. We'll jump on this and record and just kind of, talk about whatever it is, problems, solutions, whatever it might be. And if we create some cool stuff out of it, we'll produce and decide if it's any good or not together. Anytime, because it's just a great medium to get amazing content. And frankly too, like, there's a kind of a synergy in video. You have a great dynamic on video. We don't have the rapport to make that great yet. And I think this is great, but I think you could, if over time, as you get to know someone, you could actually have a really amazing conversation. So selfishly, I want to build that too. So we have that part of it too.
Well, cool. By the way, you're building something really special. I'm seeing you and Brett everywhere now on my LinkedIn feed. So it's clear you're building momentum.
Our marketing team is crushing.
You can either be good or loud, and I choose loud. It sounds like you might be doing that too.
I like loud too. Loud's good. Very good. Really appreciate it. This should go really well for you guys. We'll get like lots of shorts and videos and blogs and all kinds of things out of it. So looking forward to seeing the end production.
Honored to be a part of it. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Actually, we might take some of this and put it, we're trying to sell bonus episodes on our podcast, like 3 or 4 months from now. Not right now. We don't have the traction yet. So I was going to possibly take some of this, Gretchen knew about this, possibly take some of this and actually make a bonus episode so that we can say, hey, this is an example. Nobody needs to know you didn't pay for it down the road. So
Awesome.
We might do
Yeah.
that too. Get you lots of
Any
exposure.
way that we can
It'll
help
get you
each
just
other.
free exposure. So
Yeah. Any way we help each other, I'm in.
cool. Appreciate it, Jason.
Thank you, Justin.
Thanks for your
including me.
time. All right, take it easy.